From the very beginning, Natalie felt it the quiet truth no one ever said out loud in her family: the spotlight belonged to Elaine. Growing up in their neat little suburban Illinois home, Natalie often wondered what it would feel like to truly belong. The walls were filled with family photos, but her face rarely appeared in them. Her parents' laughter echoed through the hallway, warm and bright, but somehow it always seemed directed somewhere else toward Elaine. Elaine, 2 years younger, was the golden child, the one who sparkled, the one who drew people in without even trying. Her ballet recitals earned standing ovations, her school projects were displayed proudly on the refrigerator, and every tiny achievement became a family celebration. Meanwhile, Natalie's accomplishments, the straight A's, the certificates folded neatly inside her backpack, the sketches she drew late at night under the glow of her bedside lamp, went mostly unnoticed, collecting dust along with her unspoken hopes. She remembers one evening vividly. 8 years old, sitting on the staircase, knees pulled tight to her chest, clutching her favorite book. Downstairs, her parents were laughing with Elaine, praising her for scoring a single goal at her softball game. Natalie waited, hoping someone would call her name, invite her into the conversation, ask about her day, but the moment never came. "I used to think," Natalie would later admit, "that maybe if I worked harder, if I got better grades, won more awards, made myself perfect, then they'd finally see me. But no matter what I did, Elaine was always the star, and me, I was just there." And that was the cruelest part. It wasn't loud rejection. It wasn't shouting or punishment or anger. It was quieter than that, colder than that. It was indifference. That subtle, aching realization that the people who should have loved her the loudest barely noticed her at all. When Natalie lay awake at night, staring at the glow and the dark stars on her ceiling, she would whisper questions into the silence. Am I not enough? Do they even see me? But the walls never answered, and neither did her parents. Natalie had been hinting about her 16th birthday for months. It wasn't much to ask, just a small dinner at her favorite pizza place with 2 or 3 friends. No balloons, no expensive gifts, no big celebration. Just acknowledgement, just to feel seen. For weeks, she left little reminders around the house, sticky notes on the fridge, a casual "next Friday's my birthday" dropped into conversations. Every time her mother nodded absent-mindedly, her father mumbled something distractedly, and Natalie let herself believe they'd remember, that they'd care. But when the day came, the house was quiet. Her mom was rushing out the door to drive Elaine to a last-minute dance rehearsal. Her dad left early for work, muttering about a deadline. No happy birthday, no card, not even a hug. By the time the evening rolled around, Natalie sat on the edge of her bed phone, silent, stomach hollow. Finally, she ordered herself a small pepperoni pizza. She ate it cross-legged on her bedroom floor, the dim glow of her bedside lamp her only company. As she chewed, she stared at the glossy brochures scattered around her colleges. She dreamed of attending scholarships. She prayed that she'd get a future she hoped would feel less lonely than this moment. There was no cake, no candles, no one singing her name. That night, Natalie would later recall softly, "I realized birthdays aren't about the presents or the party, they're about the people who remember you. And the people who were supposed to remember me didn't." 5 years later, Elaine turned 16. The difference was a knife to the heart. Their parents rented out an entire event hall, chandeliers, glittering music, blasting tables overflowing with food. Elaine twirled under the spotlight in a sparkling dress, while 100 guests cheered her name. A brand new used car waited outside, wrapped in a giant red bow. Photos flashed, laughter filled the air, and Natalie stood in the corner, invisible in her own family all over again. The sharp contrast burned into her memory, carving deep scars she carried for years. In this family, love had always been conditional, and she had never met the conditions. Natalie was a straight-A student. She spent late nights bent over textbooks, highlighters bleeding across the pages, while the rest of the house slept. Every report card, every academic award, every honor society invitation, she thought maybe this time they'd notice. Maybe this time they'd finally be proud. But pride was a gift her parents rarely offered her. Her clearest memory came during 8th grade, the night of her school's academic achievement ceremony. Natalie had worked tirelessly all year, balancing 3 advanced classes, endless homework, and extracurriculars. That night, she walked onto the brightly lit stage, heart pounding, clutching her certificate for ranking in the top 3% of her entire grade. She scanned the audience, expecting to see her mom waving, her dad taking photos, anyone looking back at her. But the seats where they were supposed to sit were empty. Her parents hadn't come. Instead, they were across town cheering for Elaine at her dance recital. Natalie stood there under the harsh stage lights holding a certificate that suddenly felt heavy, meaningless, even humiliating. Around her, other kids' families screamed their names, cameras flashing, balloons waving. Teachers hugged their students, parents cried, siblings clapped and shouted. And Natalie, she walked off that stage alone, invisible in a room full of celebration. Later that night, when she came home still wearing her medal, her mother barely looked up from the couch. "Oh, that's nice, honey. Elaine had an amazing performance tonight." And just like that, her achievement was swallowed whole by Elaine's spotlight. "That was the night," Natalie would later whisper. "I learned something I wish I hadn't, that in our family effort didn't matter. Results didn't matter. I didn't matter." When Natalie was accepted into Northwestern University, she thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment her parents finally looked at her and said, "We're proud of you." But instead, her mother sighed and said Elaine's going to need help with her applications too, while her father added, "We can give you $500 a semester. The rest is on you." $500. Not enough to cover textbooks, let alone tuition. So Natalie built her future the only way she knew how, with her own two hands. She worked mornings at a busy coffee shop downtown, arriving before sunrise, the smell of espresso clinging to her clothes. At noon, she hurried across town for her library shift, shelving books and whispering answers to lost students in hushed tones. And on weekends, when most people her age were out at parties or football game, Natalie tied on an apron and waitressed at a crowded diner until past midnight. 3 jobs, 7 days a week, 4 hours of sleep on the good nights. There were moments when exhaustion swallowed her whole. Standing behind the espresso machine at 6 a.m., her hands trembled from lack of rest. By evening, she'd sprint to the bus stop, textbooks open on her lap, memorizing marketing formulas while balancing a lukewarm sandwich on her knees. On Sunday nights, she collapsed on her thin dorm mattress, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much longer she could keep this pace without breaking. And through it all, she carried the quiet hope that if she just worked hard enough, someone would notice. Someone would say she mattered. But when Natalie sent her parents her first semester grades straight A's, despite working over 40 hours a week, their response was painfully simple. "That's nice, honey," her mother said distractedly. "Elaine's switching her major again," her father added. And just like that, Natalie's sacrifices vanished into silence. This was the moment Natalie realized something devastating. If she wanted a better future, she'd have to build it alone, brick by brick, night by sleepless night. While Natalie was juggling 3 jobs just to survive, Elaine's college life looked like something out of a glossy brochure. Their parents paid Elaine's full tuition at the University of Chicago without hesitation. Not just tuition, they covered her rent, her books, her spending money, even her weekend trips with friends. When Elaine struggled in a class, they hired private tutors. When she decided the dorm food wasn't healthy enough, they moved her into a chic off-campus apartment, paid in full security deposit, monthly rent, utilities. She didn't have to worry about a single bill. By her sophomore year, Elaine had switched her major for the 2nd time, then a 3rd, then a 4th. Every time their parents cheered her on, "Follow your passion, sweetie. We'll support you no matter what." And when she suddenly decided she needed to find herself and announced a semester abroad in Europe, they didn't blink. Plane tickets, program fees, travel money all covered. Natalie, meanwhile, couldn't afford to join a single club on campus. She skipped events with her classmates because the $15 entry fee meant sacrificing groceries for the week. While Elaine was sipping espresso in Paris, Natalie was standing behind an espresso machine at 6 a.m., struggling to stay awake after only 4 hours of sleep. The contrast was brutal. It wasn't just financial, it was emotional. Their parents' language, their tone, their energy, everything about the way they treated Elaine was drenched in warmth and pride. With Natalie, it was transactional, cold, distant. Every conversation about money ended with "You're so independent," as if her self-sufficiency was a gift to them, not a burden on her shoulders. The soft gray couch, bought secondhand, but placed carefully as if it were a luxury item. The framed photo of the Chicago skyline by the balcony, a symbol of the city she fought tooth and nail to conquer. For the first time in her life, Natalie wasn't just existing. She was living. Inside these walls, there were no comparisons. No constant reminders that she wasn't good enough. No footsteps of Elaine walking through doors she never earned. For the first time ever, Natalie had carved out a sanctuary, a space where her worth wasn't debated, questioned, or ignored. Here she was safe. She imagined quiet Sunday mornings, with coffee by the window late nights, curled under a blanket, watching movies, and coming home after long days to complete sacred silence. For Natalie, this apartment wasn't just four walls. It was proof that independence didn't mean invisibility, that being the overlooked daughter didn't mean being powerless forever. And yet in stories like this, peace rarely lasts. Natalie didn't know it yet, but the sanctuary she had built so carefully was about to become the center of a storm, one that would test everything she thought she knew about family loyalty and the price of freedom. It started small, harmless even, or at least that's what Elaine wanted Natalie to believe. One Saturday morning, Natalie came home from the grocery store and noticed something strange. Her favorite silk blouse, the one she bought after saving tips for months, was missing from the hanger. She checked the laundry basket. She checked the couch. Nothing. The next day, she saw Elaine's Instagram story, a perfectly staged mirror selfie. The caption read, "Brunch vibes." And there it was, Natalie's blouse draped across Elaine's shoulders like it had always belonged to her. Her chest tightened, but Natalie said nothing. Maybe it was a one-time thing, but it wasn't. Soon it wasn't just the blouse. It was the heels Natalie saved up for 6 months to buy, the designer handbag she bought on sale after weeks of budgeting. Even the delicate gold bracelet her grandmother left her. One by one, little pieces of Natalie's hard-earned life were disappearing and appearing on Elaine's Instagram feed. Every time Natalie confronted her, Elaine shrugged it off with the same rehearsed line. "Oh, I thought you weren't using it, so I just borrowed it." Borrowed, a word that tasted like poison in Natalie's mouth. Because borrowing meant asking, borrowing meant respect. Elaine didn't ask, Elaine didn't respect. She simply took. Natalie started locking her bedroom door, hiding her favorite things, double-checking drawers and closets like a prisoner guarding secrets in her own home. But the betrayal wasn't just about the clothes or the shoes or the jewelry. It was about something much deeper, the violation of trust. The realization that even in the sanctuary she built, Elaine's shadow was creeping in, erasing the fragile boundaries Natalie had fought so hard to create. And deep down, Natalie knew this was only the beginning. Natalie used to love coming home. Closing the door behind her apartment in River North always felt like stepping into a world that was hers, quiet, safe, untouched. Until one Tuesday afternoon, she unlocked the door, walked in, and froze. Elaine was sitting cross-legged on Natalie's couch, a glass of wine in one hand, the TV remote in the other, laughing at some rom-com like she owned the place. Natalie blinked. "What are you doing here?" Elaine barely looked up. "Oh, the doorman let me in," she said casually, as if this was perfectly normal. "I thought you wouldn't mind. Your Netflix is better." That was the first time, but it wasn't the last. At first, Natalie tried to believe it was harmless, just her sister hanging out. But soon, these quick visits became a pattern. Elaine would show up unannounced every other day, using the doorman's trust to bypass Natalie entirely. Sometimes Natalie would come home to find the fridge raided, the living room a mess, her scented candles burned down to nothing. Other times, Elaine brought friends over, people Natalie didn't even know, lounging in her living room, drinking her wine, touching her things. Every time Natalie confronted her, Elaine laughed it off with the same rehearsed excuse, "Relax, Nat. You're so uptight. I am family." Family. A single word Elaine used like a master key, unlocking doors that should have stayed closed. A word that became a weapon, forcing Natalie to feel guilty for wanting privacy, for wanting space, for wanting something, anything of her own. But deep inside, Natalie's frustration was building into something dangerous. Every uninvited visit wasn't just an intrusion into her apartment. It was an invasion of her independence, her boundaries, and her freedom. And though Natalie stayed quiet, the silence wouldn't last much longer. Natalie was exhausted. She had just returned from a 4-day business trip in Boston, her shoulders sore, her mind drained, her suitcase dragging behind her. All she wanted was one thing: silence. Her sanctuary, her River North apartment. But the moment the elevator doors opened, something felt wrong. Music. Loud thumping music. The kind that didn't belong in her quiet hallway. Her brows furrowed. Apartment 804. Her apartment. The bass was coming from her place. Natalie's heart began to pound. She unlocked the door, and what she saw nearly made her knees buckle. Her living room, her sanctuary, was unrecognizable. Strobe lights flashing, music blasting, empty bottles scattered across the floor, half-eaten pizza on her marble counter, and strangers. That journal held years of her thoughts, fears, heartbreaks, every secret she never dared to say out loud. And now strangers were flipping through the pages, laughing, pointing, gossiping. Natalie snapped. Her voice cut through the music like glass shattering everyone out. Now the room went silent. A few people exchanged awkward glances, hesitated until Natalie stormed to the speaker, yanked the plug, and slammed it down. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I said out. One by one they filed out, murmuring under their breath. Elaine stood frozen glass, still in hand, her smile gone. Natalie turned to her sister, her voice low, trembling with fury. You crossed the line, Elaine. This is not your home, and I am done being disrespected. For the first time, Elaine didn't have a comeback. She just stared back speechless as Natalie's words hung heavy in the room. This wasn't just about a party. This was about years of being overlooked, unheard, and invaded. This was Natalie's breaking point. Natalie's phone buzzed on a Tuesday afternoon. Mom, dinner tonight. It's important. Be here at 7. That was it. No explanation. No warning. Just a command. Natalie stared at the message, unease washing over her. Important usually meant one thing in her family: trouble. And when her parents called an emergency dinner, it rarely ended well for her. By the time she arrived at her parents' house, the sky had already turned a soft shade of violet. The smell of roasted chicken drifted from the kitchen. The table was set beautifully, candles flickering. Everything looked perfect, almost too perfect. But Natalie's gut twisted. Something was off. Her father's tight smile, her mother's unusually soft tone. Even Elaine, sitting there in her floral dress pretending to scroll her phone, looked like she knew something Natalie didn't. Her father leaned forward as if this was supposed to comfort her. We already talked to your building manager. They're expecting her on Saturday. Natalie blinked, her chest tightened. Her parents had made the decision without her, gone behind her back. Even called the building as if her home didn't belong to her at all. Elaine, of course, played her part perfectly, lowering her head, biting her lip, pretending to be the helpless victim. But Natalie saw it, the faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips, the smugness she tried to hide, the silence stretched, and then Natalie spoke, her voice cold, steady, unshakable. That won't be possible. Her mother frowned, confused. Natalie, be reasonable. No, Natalie cut her off. I moved out of that condo 6 weeks ago. Elaine can't live there. No one can. I don't live there anymore. The entire table froze. Her father's fork clattered onto his plate. Her mother's hand trembled as she gripped her napkin. They were handing over her sanctuary like it was nothing more than a hotel room. Natalie stared at the keys, then at Elaine, who reached out slowly, pretending to hesitate, but Natalie caught it, the little flicker of triumph in her sister's eyes. Elaine had been waiting for this moment. Natalie. Excuse me, Mom. Honey, we've already decided. It's just temporary. You're being unreasonable. Natalie's voice was calm, dangerously calm. Natalie, unreasonable. You made a decision about my home without even asking me. Her father sighed, trying to sound patient but failing. Dad, Natalie, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Elaine needs help. You're her sister. You should support her. And there it was, the same script she'd heard her whole life. Elaine needed help. Natalie should sacrifice. Natalie should bend. Natalie should disappear. Natalie's chest tightened, but this time she didn't bend. Natalie sat perfectly still, her fingers resting on the edge of the table. Her parents were staring at her, expecting her to break, but she didn't. Instead, she lifted her gaze, calm, unnervingly calm. And then she said it. Natalie, I moved out 6 weeks ago. 5 words. That was all it took. The sound in the room died instantly. The clinking of cutlery stopped. The humming air conditioner suddenly felt deafening. Time itself seemed to freeze. Her mother's fork slipped from her hand and clattered onto the plate. Mom, what did you just say? Her father blinked rapidly as if trying to process what he'd heard. Dad, Natalie, what do you mean you moved out? Elaine's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her smugness evaporated, replaced by raw disbelief. She stared at Natalie like she was looking at a stranger. Natalie leaned back in her chair, her voice steady but laced with years of pain. Natalie, 6 weeks ago, I packed my things and left River North.